Hello, my name is Tame, and here with me is Jacob and Cinta. So the project kind of started actually back in October during Filipino American History Month, when Jacob he approached me.
I was just thinking, wow, it would be nice to have some PSA history involved during Philippine Culture Night.
Yeah, and Jacob has really done an amazing job carrying the cultural committee this year. We've learned so much from the cultural committee, and also seeing beyond what the cultural committee has supported, just from other board members and other members of our community have contributed to help us get to where we are with this project.
Mm-hmm. So back in October, my first immediate thought was, oh no, what are we going to do for images? So the first thing I did was go online and I Googled stuff. I went to the university website and looked at the library system. To my surprise, something titled the Filippinesotans came up. It was called the Filippinesotans Quarterly Report, and it could also be checked out.
Yeah, and after, finding this, sitting down, reading through it together, we wanted to do even more research. We wanted to see what else was in the archives, what else we could find. And through that, we were able to find lots of documentation on past rosters, registration, officers, and to our surprise, we actually knew a lot of the officers and registered members of PSA back when it was the Filippinesotans, the Filipino-Minnesotan Association, the Filipino-Minnesotan Club, and what it is today, the Philippine Student Association.
Filipino-American history is usually recognized as different waves when periods of mass immigration from the Philippines to the U.S. occurred. The first wave happened 425 years ago on October 18, 1587. Landing near Morro Bay, California, the Luzon Indios were the first documented Asians to arrive in North America. The first settlers, Manila men, then formed a permanent settlement in Louisiana in 1763. The second significant wave of immigration occurred during the United States occupation of the Philippines. This wave of immigration has sometimes been known as the Manong generation. During this wave, many Filipinos came for different reasons, but one influencer that was bringing Filipinos to the U.S. was the Pensionado Act of the Philippine Commission. Passed in August 1903, the Pensionado Act was a scholarship exchange program that allowed Filipino students to attend universities in the U.S. The goal of the program was to expose the people of the U.S. to the best and brightest Filipino youths. The students who were accepted into the program were known as pensionados.
The first year of the Pensionado Act, over 20,000 people applied to the program, but only 100 applicants were accepted. It was a very competitive program, and during its early stages, it was only limited to wealthier Filipino men and well-educated families. However, as the program expanded and more students were accepted, it became more accessible to women and lower-income families. By 1912, the program was steadily increasing and supporting 209 students around different universities in the U.S. Among the pensionados were some of the first Filipino nursing students to come to the United States. One of these early pensionados, Olivia Salamanca, came to St. Paul in 1905 to take secondary courses before enrolling into the Women's Medical College in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, a year later. She would become the second Filipino physician after graduating in 1910 at the age of 21. Although Salamanca did not stay long-term, she is most likely the first documented Filipino to step onto Minnesotan soil. The first Filipino to live in Minnesota was a woman by the name of Basilisa Garcia, born 1884. A teacher at the University of the Philippines, she married Samuel J. Epperly, a Minnesota soldier stationed in the Philippines during the Philippine-American War, and in 1918, they moved to Minnesota, where their home became the place for Filipino expats to gather in the coming years. In terms of the University of Minnesota, the first student was Juan Claros Orendain. Entering the law school in 1917, he was a part of the Cosmopolitan Club, a collection of international students. According to a 1949 report done by the Interracial Commission, there were 4 recorded Filipino students in 1920. The following year, that number increased to 12, and doubled the next to 24. One of these students was Rudolf Flores Ruñez, preceded by his brothers Sixto and Abelardo. He came to Minnesota in 1922. Rudolf would become a member of the Filippinesotans, a club of Filipino students established just 2 years prior.
One snowy day in late December 1920, the air was likely cold, frigid, and dry as a small group of Filipino students at the University of Minnesota huddled next to a radiator. In their best handwriting, they wrote Constitution atop a loose-leaf sheet of typewriter paper along with the date, December 22nd, 1920, in the upper left-hand corner. Underneath the words Article 1, Name, was written with the following phrase to establish their name. This organization shall be known as the Filippinesotans. Followed by those words was their next article, Objectives. The purpose of this organization shall be
To uphold the Minnesota spirit.
to preserve Philippine ideals and traditions,
To work for a friendly understanding of Philippine affairs among the faculty and students of the University of Minnesota.
to disseminate whenever needed and requested reliable information on things Philippine,
To help new students from the Philippines orient themselves in the university and to promote good fellowship among the members. Their first constitution had 10 articles in total. It was 5 pages long, and the 6th page was dedicated for each of the 10 student signatures. Following the writing of their constitution, exactly 1 week later, on December 29, 1920, a letter of correspondence came from the university's Dean of Student Affairs. I hereby approve the organization and recognition of the Filippinesotans, the constitution of which you submitted to me some days ago. With that, the Filippinesotans was officially recognized as a registered student organization at the University of Minnesota and began their first year of official activity in 1921. Much like with all student organizations, the Filippinesotans published a report every quarter documenting the activities and events the club produced or participated in. However, only one report survives, Volume 1, Number 1, published December 1922. I have here with me the first edition, so I'd love to read some to you. The Quarterly Filippinesotan. The Filipino students of the University of Minnesota are organized into a club known as the Filippinesotans, a word coined by the members to represent the Filipino spirit in Minnesota and the Minnesota spirit in the Philippines. Like all other organizations, Filipino clubs throughout the United States have found it necessary to issue their members and their friends some sort of printed matter of general interest to them. The Filippinesotans are making this in first number of their quarterly, an initial attempt in this direction. In this section, we'll do a little review of the quarter. So in university news, we have a couple bullets here. The Filippinesotans of 1923 have an active membership of 27 strong. They come from different institutions of the States. The first open meeting of the Filippinesotans, held October 14th, was well attended by the members and their friends. The main parts of the program were the cariñosa, informal introduction by everyone, and the refreshments. Clauses 3 and 4 is a musical program and dance presented at the Little Theater and Ballroom on December 2nd with howling success by the Filippinesotans. The last open meeting of the club will be held on room 211 at the Minnesota Union on Wednesday, December 20th at 4 p.m. Dean G. S. Ford will speak, and Eugenio M. Fambuena will present the next series of papers on the Philippines.
Among those early activities was their participation in a campaign drive for the funding of Northrop Auditorium and Memorial Stadium. The Filippinesotans also produced plays and musical programmings featuring rondalla and estudiantina ensembles. According to a 1925 letter from the Dean of Women, their parties would get quite boisterous. Addressed to Dean Nicholson from Ann Dudley Blitz, dated September 21st, 1925, My dear Dean Nicholson, the Filippinesotans have made a reservation for Shevlin Hall for this week, Friday. You will recall that I spoke to you about the conduct of their last party. The maids reported that at no other party ever held in Shevlin Hall has the spooning and general laxness been so marked and the control of this condition so difficult. You said at the time that you would like to speak to some member of the group about this before they had another party. Mr. Aquino is the president and Mr. Runez is the social chairman who has made the reservation. While I am entirely willing to speak to the young men about this myself, I am referring it to you because I thought from what you said about your acquaintance with them personally, you might be able to make it more effective. Since this is their first party of the year, I want to safeguard conditions under which they start out. Yours sincerely, Ann Dudley Blitz. Although this may have been less on the part of decency and more on racism, as she strongly supported segregated housing and disapproved of interracial interactions.
By the late 1930s, the Filippinesotans began to dwindle. The number of Filipino students that remained on campus began to decline due to the outbreak of the Second World War. By 1944, the Senate Committee on Student Affairs gave the formal decision to disband the Filippinesotans on grounds of inactivity. The Interracial Commission report of 1949 noted that only 2 Filipino students remained in the years 1948 to 1949.
Yeah, so it's nice that we're here in Shelvin Hall, specifically in this massive space. We're basically closing out our assessment of 102 years of Filipino Minnesotan history in the room where it all began. And that's
It's so cool, just because, we're reading these reports, we're reading all the things that they're doing back in the 20s, the 50s. We see the cultural dances, them serving Filipino authentic food, having Christmas parties and just regular parties. And it really goes to show that it's still here today. And after 100 years, we can surely say that Filipino history is Minnesotan history.